coming and attending. We go to the next slide. Reach. Before we get started, I would like to just acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. If you would like, you can also acknowledge your country from which you're on in the chat. And as always, if you've got any questions as we go through today, just put your hand up or put it in the chat. We've got a real packed agenda, and taking on feedback from our last town hall, we're diving now, or doing a deeper dive into some of the qualifications that you'll see come out in the coming weeks. We are getting to that point where we have draft qualifications and core units of competency to start sharing with you all, which is really exciting. And so we would that's what today's session is going to be focused on. It is what you asked for, that deeper dive into the quals, why the changes are occurring, what are the impacts, and all of that kind of business. We are also going to introduce our industry engagement team, which I'm sure you already know who they are, and they're going to talk about how they're going to play a big part in this, the back end of this project, to ensure that you are aware of what is coming and how you can provide feedback to us. We'll give you an update on the pathway and progression chart. As always, this is an evolving beast, and as you'll see as we're progressing through the development, what we're doing is changing all the time. We're then going to jump into two qualifications, being the electrical qualification and the elect fitter qualification, where Brett's going to talk to you about the proposed qualification structures, rules, and those changes. And then we've got 6 qualifications that we're going to run through with you, and a number of skill sets. And then we're just going to open up the floor, and hopefully we don't run out of time. We've got 2 hours together. But as we say, if you've got questions, ask along the way. Don't wait till the end. We would rather answer your questions along the way. Go to the next one. So before we get started, Jess is out and about. So very quickly, he's going to introduce the industry engagement team that's working on this and what they're going to do for us and for you, to ensure that you are well aware of what's coming down the pipeline, and how you can get involved in providing us with feedback. So over to Jess.
Thanks, Christina. One of the biggest engagement activities we're doing across PSO at the moment is around this UEE training package review. As many of you know, it's a huge body of work that's occurring here at PSO. And rather than dropping the entire package on the industry all at once and asking everybody to absorb all of the hundreds of different training products, quals, units, skill sets, all in a single hit, we've moved into basically a staged release model for consultation. I call it consultation light almost. We've been releasing a group of qualifications progressively from July through October. We had the first release last month, and then we've got another one that's scheduled for the end of this month, and the tracking to plan for the remaining releases in September and October as well. The reason we've taken this approach of sort of a tranche delivery, it's pretty simple. It's there's a lot of work there. So to expect industry training providers, employers, regulators, peaks to review everything all at once, it's unreasonable, because it's so much work and it's pretty overwhelming. By breaking all of this up into smaller releases, all of the stakeholders, you can focus on areas that are sort of more relevant to you, and also in more bite-sized chunks to provide more meaningful feedback. So the next release we've got on the 31st of this month includes a broad mix of products, which includes the Cert 2 Electrotech, Cert 3 in Fire Detection and Control. That's a new qual name. Any of you who might be a connection of Christina on LinkedIn, go and have a look at the post she put out late last week about the naming convention and about completing that. It was pretty cool. The Cert 3 and Cert 4 in Systems Integration, Cert 4 in RE, Renewable Energy, the new Cert 4 in EHA, the Hazardous Areas Qual, and Cert 2 in Electronics, as well as a range of of skill sets associated across all of those different quals as well. What we're trying to do from an IE perspective, that's myself and Ryan Palmer, is to make sure that stakeholders such as yourselves and others aren't finding out about these after they've gone live. We want to make sure that they're coming, and make sure that other important stakeholders, other than you guys that are here, will know about it, but get out to all the other different stakeholders around the traps and make sure they get it. So trying to organise, we're identifying all of the organisations, the employers, regulators, most likely to be affected by a particular release. So looking at the quals that are actually coming out and the other training products and engaging with them, in the couple of weeks leading up to it, making sure they understand what's coming, when it's going to be coming, and how they can have input. We're also complementing this written feedback process so that all of those training products will go up into a portal that's being stood up at the moment, with a dedicated feedback loops for you to provide your feedback on all the different products. Also, some people are not as comfortable, providing that sort of formalized feedback. So we've come up with a dedicated Q&A webinar program too, which hopefully have the dates for that pretty soon and be able to send out some links for those sort of things. We've learned through previous consultations, not everybody likes the written submissions. So some people are more comfortable doing it in a Teams environment, asking it in real time, and talking through it. So it's just another mechanism for us to capture feedback and sometimes maybe even have a richer discussion. So importantly, this isn't just a once-off, so we're going to be doing it as we go. This will be this month, it'll be the following month, and then the month after that, which should hopefully close it out before we get into consultation full. A tranche is released, the target engagement occurs, we have those webinars, the feedback's gathered, and we move on to the next release. So from our perspective, it's helping us manage our engagement in a much more deliberate way, hopefully reducing a bit of consultation fatigue, and people can attack it a bit more meaningfully, and allowing people to focus on things that matter the most to them. And it just gives us a few different different opportunities to gather that feedback through, rather than relying on that big single consultation, which has been the way that these have been run in the past. So overall, we're seeing some good levels of engagement, on track with the release schedule, and we'll continue working through the remaining qual groups over the coming months as the review progresses. So that's about me.
Thanks, Jess. That's great. So in the coming weeks, you'll start to see some extra comms coming out from us in terms of those Q&A sessions, and feedback going up on the website, or drafts going up on the website for you to get involved in. So keep an eye out for your emails and our socials, for sure. Thanks, Jess, and enjoy the Senate. How are we going so far? So on this slide, it's just keeping you informed of where we're at. And what you'll see on here is that we've got 387 products in drafting at the moment. So when you start to see the superseded or deleted, it just means that the current training products that we have from TGA, it is that we've just updated them, and our tracking system identifies them as being superseded by a new version of the unit with a new name or a new code. So, and what we mean by deleted is that it may, we have just parked it, in terms of we're not managing that proactively or developing it because of the feedback that we've received. So all in all, though, we are well and truly into development, and we are, some would say, tentatively on track. Brett, I look at Brett when I say that. He gets nervous when I call that out. In the next slide, just to give you an update. So last time we spoke that there was about 25 qualifications out of the 74 being carried forward. Due to many things, one of those is that through the low and no enrolments process, we identified a number of qualifications that either needed to be merged or deleted because of the underuse. And as we've gone through and started looking at the development, there are we've had to bring extra quals back into the pathways. So we're up to, I think it's 30, Brett, 34.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, we're back up to 34, and some of those changes have been directly related to the electrical fitter qualification and ensuring that there's a pathway from the Cert 3 in particular all the way through to your diploma of electrical engineering, or systems engineering, I should say. In addition to that, there's a pathway from a Cert 3 in air conditioning and refrigeration through to a dedicated diploma of air conditioning and refrigeration. And that's probably the biggest changes in terms of what has occurred in this so far. Next. I'm going to hand over to Brett now, and he's going to talk to you about two particular qualifications.
So just thought we'd give an update today on two of our, this one, our highest enrolment qualification, and also two that have licensing implications. This one all over the country, the other one, the fitter in certain jurisdictions. So just an update on this, and still very much working through finalising units in this qualification. But the biggest change for the electrician Cert 3 would be the fact that we're looking at this stage at a core only qualification. At the moment, 24 units, including, as you'll see in the key changes there, some workplace evidence gathering units, which are currently in draft with the technical committee for consideration. There's currently 4 of those drafted units, one as a starting point, one as a finishing point, and 2 as sort of checkpoints as you work your way through the qualification. But they are very much in draft format with the tech committee, getting lots of good feedback from them. Also, our broad SME group has had a look at those units, and so expecting some feedback from them as well. The other one in this one, I guess, is we had some early feedback from an early release of this we did with just basically just an initial draft of the qual and the unit names, etc. There were some units that have been removed, but they had been sort of replaced with newer versions. But we did get have had some continual feedback around the ERAC essential performance capabilities. Rest assured, anyone playing in this space, that the essential performance capabilities will be certainly mapped across the qualification, and the essential elements of those 2 times as required for licensing, so that they certainly won't be disappearing or missed if there's units that have been removed that include them, or units consolidated, etc. They would certainly either be put into the new units, or if they could be put into other units within the qualification as applicable. So the EPCs is certainly forefront of this qualification considerations for us, knowing the licensing outcome at the end of it, that you need to have met those ERAC EPCs. And the other one, just quickly on this one, is that a new unit around low voltage rescue and emergency response. And this came out of when we did our review of the UET units. So the UET rescue from a live panel is currently in the core of this qualification. It was identified through that process that it wasn't really suitable unit for apprentice electricians to be doing, or also it's used in quite a few of the Cert 3s as an elective option. So this unit is really more specific, actually just rescue from a low voltage rescue from a energized situation, rather than you're working on the live panel with a safety observer, etc., like the UET unit is designed for. So this is not designed as doing live work. It's designed with dealing with a situation if you come across it as an electrotechnology worker and someone has been in the unfortunate situation of coming in contact with live low voltage. So that's what the aim of this unit is to be. Might have a look at the fitter now, Rach. So the fitter qual, we thought we'd bring this one up here just because we did socialise a potential amalgamation of the fitter qual with the machine repair qualification Cert 3 and also the switched gear and control gear, and having specialisations. When we drafted that up, took it to the tech committee, there was various reasons why and objections to that from the subject matter experts in the tech committee and key stakeholders, particularly some of the different regions where it is licensed, the fitter qual. They had concerns around that proposal. So we've gone back to a standalone Cert 3 in electrical fitting. So still very similar to the old qual. It'll have the new perform low voltage rescue and emergency response. And it's also got based on what's happened in the electrician qual, where we've got a sort of early tools and workshop unit that is very specific to electricians. So they do some install work in that, which for those of you in the know that fitters can't do install of LV wiring systems. So we've made a more generic unit that's going to be used across various other Cert 3s in the UEE around the use of tools in an electrotechnology work environment. So, as I said, the core structure remains pretty closely aligned to the current qualification, with updates to all the units and some new units replacing some ones that were removed that were deemed at Cert 2 level. And the electives have been refined. There was quite a large elective bank in this qualification. So at the moment in the current draft, we've refined those down based on the enrolment data against this qualification. So what electives effectively were being used. So there was a bunch of them that were never being used in this qual. So we've removed those in the current draft, but still very much work in process again with the SME group and the tech committee, these ones. But we thought it was pertinent to give an update of those because there's quite a bit of interest in those, and particularly as two of our licensed outcome quals.
Okay. So in the coming weeks, at the end of this month, early September, the first initial drafts will come out for feedback. They are not public and government. This is not official public and government consultation at this point. We have said all along that we are providing an opportunity and transparency so that there is no surprises coming down the track once it's up on TGA for you. And this is the first step in that process. We are looking at, and our communication and marketing team is designing a web page for us to ensure that you can see the training products, see the changes, and then provide feedback to us and the rationale behind those changes for the qualification and the associated training products. So once our website designer has updated that, we will ensure that we get those qualifications and the core units of competency available for you. I must iterate that it's core units at this point in time because it is the core skills and knowledge that links to the qualification outcome that everyone will need to do. And we are, like I said on those slides, a few slides before, heavily under drafting, in the drafting phase at the moment. And so not all electives have been drafted. And because electives sit across so many qualifications, we need to make sure that they are fully reviewed before we put them out. So starting next month, the first lot of documents or training products, qualifications and skill sets with the core units of competency that will be released for initial feedback are on the slides here. So we're going to talk to you today. We're going to walk you through these so that you understand the rationale and ask us as many questions as you like. So what we've got today, we're going to talk to you about the Cert 2 in electrotechnology. We're going to talk to you about the fire and detection, the Cert 3 in fire detection and control. We're going to talk to you about the Cert 3 in systems integrators or integration, the Cert 4 in renewable energy, and our Cert 2 in electronics and our Cert 4 in electrical equipment and hazardous areas. So your Cert 4 in hazard areas if you are those RTOs that deliver that. In conjunction to those qualifications, we have been open about the fact, and the feedback that we have received from our stakeholders was really clear that they wanted more skill sets available for especially post-trade training or upskilling or cross-skilling, reskilling, whatever you want to call it. So we have got a number of skill sets that we're going to talk to you through and how that links back into the qualifications and how that links to pathways from your trades into gaining specialised skills as you progress through your career, or you know, as we provide, or as the RTOs on this call, you have the opportunity to provide these more niche skill sets for upskilling across the line, across the industry. So I'm going to hand back to Brett. Brett's going to talk to you about the Cert 2 in electrotechnology. On each slide, we do have like the overview, which you'll get a copy of this pack, but we also are going to run you through what it looks like, the actual document itself. So over to Brett for the first one.
Thanks, Christina. And as Christina said, you will be getting a copy of these slides, so I'm not going to read out all the points to you, but I guess the key point on this and all our qualifications is the removal of waiting points, which we spoke about previously. So what that looks like for this qual is we've ended up with 7 core units and then 4 electives and just a group A of electives. So there's just a general group of electives, not multiple groups as there was. I think there was A and B in the previous one. So in the new components there, we've brought in and specifically written at Cert 2 level, that 27 unit is a competency development unit. So thought it was really important for them to actually understand at Cert 2 level, students to understand the structure of what they're doing, that the pathways, particularly for this qualification onto the other UEE quals at Cert 3 level. So that's the intent of that unit. The other 2 there, while they were 38 and 52 actually in this qualification, they've had major rework as core units. So one of them being a maths in electrotechnology type unit, and the other one has been expanded because of the removal of the Cert 3 DC unit that was in this qualification. And I guess that's probably one of the major changes to this qual, is that the units, well, the core particularly, are all Cert 2 standalone units now. There's nothing embedded out of the Cert 3 qualifications at core level. There is a couple of electives around electronic soldering, basic soldering and stuff that may cross over to Cert 3, but the core has been written at Cert 2 level. So the WHS unit will no longer be the Cert 3 WHS unit or the WHS unit that in the previous qualifications was used for everything from Cert 1 to advanced diploma. We now have several levels of WHS unit. So the one at this level would be a Cert 1-2 level WHS unit, and then we've got our Cert 3, etc., up to the diploma levels. So I guess they've been the main changes. We have, so on that second one, what we've removed is those legacy Cert 3 core units. So these are the idea of this Cert 2 is to have underpinning knowledge to allow you to move on to Cert 3, not gain units to allow you to credit transfer onto Cert 3, which is the current structure. The electives have been expanded quite a lot, even though we've gone down to one group. We've removed some of the non-suitable ones, but we've really expanded them out. So this qualification doesn't just lead specifically into the Cert 3 electrician qual. It leads into any of, depending on the electives you choose, can lead you into the pathway of any of the Cert 3s in electrotechnology. So we've expanded out, put more electronics in there. We've put more units around. There's even a base level instrumentation unit been included. So it's really broadened the pathway a lot, depending on the electives that you pick up. There's some ICT units in there, so the data type units. There's some BSB and ported units, so business type units, some basic business type units. So that's really been the aim of this qualification. And I just see Alex, when can we anticipate 308, whatever it ends up being, hopefully 27, to be provided for feedback. It's probably a little bit down the track, Alex, it certainly won't be included in this month's initial release, just because of that work that's going on in the background with the technical committee on that qualification. And as you would be aware, there's lots of interest in that qual. So we're working hard with the broad and the broad SME group and the technical committee on that one. So before we move on from the Cert to electrotechnology, any questions? So Tony, was that CD 0007 in the core? Is that referring to the Cert 2?
Yeah, it was the Cert 2.
Yeah, no, it won't be in. It'll have its own WHS unit, the Cert 2, which is actually the WHS unit that currently sits in the gateway qualification.
Okay. Yep, thanks.
Yep. And Kate, is it intended for 11 units to be delivered for high school students in a single year? That would be up to the Vet in Schools program, Kate, but it's certainly more deliverable in this format than the current one. And that was a consideration we took into that it is used a lot in Vet in Schools. So there was quite a number of heavy units that came from the Cert 3 in the existing qual. So, and it would appear, depend on the jurisdiction, but it'll depend on once the qual goes out and the departments of education, etc., having a look at the size of the qualification and what they deem it should be delivered in. So, Claudia, there would be no workplace requirement in the actual qualification. I know in the current one, some states tag that in, but it's not actually in the current qual either, that you need to do any workplace placement. So that again would be jurisdictional. Yeah, and that numeracy unit, Alex, definitely we've seen that as a key to this qual, and we've reworked that a bit too to make it really relevant to electrotechnology. So.
And Rach, if we just bring up the qual structure so that we can just very quickly show what it's looking like in terms of the especially the core and the
core units.
Yeah.
Yep. So you can see the 7 core units there. So we've got a couple of workshop units that have been reworked and pretty much will sit mostly at Cert 2 level. A couple of the Cert 3s are still going to use those, but we have got a Cert 3 workshop type unit that most of those are picking up. The competency development, documentation and calculations, that's that maths unit we talked about. And that 52, bit of a name change there. The old name didn't make much sense. So that's really a bit of electrotechnology principles across the board. So because of the removal of the DC unit. So there'll be a bit of Ohm's law, there'll be a bit about transformers, but not in depth. At Cert 2 level is an introduction about basic electrical principles to give that underpinning knowledge along with a maths unit. So when they progress to Cert 3, whichever UEE qualification, they're better equipped for that step. The FS unit is the WHS, or the work safely, in the energy sector, and we've also brought in an FS renewables unit, replacing the RE unit that was in there. And we'll just have, I won't run through all the electives, but if we just have a slow scan of them, Rach, you can see there's quite a number of imported BSB. The white card has moved into the electives, ICT, and then when we get down to the UEE units, we've really broadened it out to allow for movement into various Cert 3 quals from this qualification, or getting experience in different parts of the industry, and an awareness too that those other parts of the industry, everyone knows what an electrician is, or think they do at least, but they certainly know that's a pathway, but they don't know about some of the other pathways that are available in our industry, and are becoming skill shortages rapidly as technology evolves. So. And as Christina said in the chat before we go to the next one, those FS units are currently on TGA as part of the Cert 2 gateway. So if you want to have a look at those units, they are, approved and up on TGA. So.
Thanks, Brett. And just to allay Tony's fears and questions, because I'm sure you're all aware that FSO is undertaking a review into the ICT training products. We're working really closely with FSO, tracking their timelines, especially in relation to the ACMA cabler units that lead to an open registration, open cabler registration outcome. We are sense checking and working with them to make sure that it meets our requirements, our industry requirements as well. We're just tracking, keeping an eye on that. We meet with them on a monthly basis to get an update on where they're at. Before we go into this next one, Brett, there's a question there. What's the major difference between the WHS for the Cert 2 and the Cert 3? Yeah,
I was just about to type a response, but happy to take that one. So the really sort of more of a basic WHS at Cert 2 level, and then an expanded, broader and more workplace focused WHS unit at Cert 3 level, because at Cert 3 level they're employed, Cert 2 level they're generally not. So.
And Patrick's just put a comment in there about the open cabler stuff, because Patrick is working with FSO on those units for us and for them. Now, over to the Cert 3 and fire detection and control. So this qualification is a very niche qualification, is only delivered by a few RTOs out there. And we were very lucky with the SME group to have all of those RTOs plus the industry peak bodies working on this with us over the last 8 months. We have got to a point where the drafts are all settled. We've got our last SME group this Wednesday to finalise the whole thing and to get it ready for you out for initial feedback. Big changes again in terms of this qualification is that the current qual doesn't reflect contemporary work in the industry. And we have really, there's been a lot of changes in this qual to bring it up to standard. Moving forward, there are going to be 26 units of competency that will be required, similar to what the outcome or what funding in Queensland, particularly where it's mainly used, is currently funded out, which is good. 16 of those core and 10 are electives. Really key changes, I guess, is that the DV units, the UEE DV units, they are going to be replaced with the ICT units of competency. This was the SME's preference. These units, there's 2 pathways to getting an ACMA cabler registration. At the moment, it's the UEE DV pathway or the ICT pathway. And all parties have preferred or would prefer the ICT pathway, and that's why we're working very closely with FSO to make sure that any of those units that we are importing still support our industry and provide the right outcomes for our industry, as well as the ICT industry. Sustainability across all of our qualifications, the standalone sustainability unit has been removed. The reason why is sustainability should be embedded in everything that an individual does with all of their tasks. So we have embedded sustainability into every unit of competency along the way, and it becomes best practice out there. Structural changes, not really too much. So if I open up the Cert 3, let me run you through how we've packaged this together to help with some of the, Tony, I know you'll be interested in how we've done this to help with mitigating some of the major changes under the TPOF. So let's go down. Some of the things that we have done in this particular qual, the group wanted a capstone unit to finish off the qualification and be able to show that the students have can do all the parts to fire detection and control work, which is really cool. So what you'll see in the packaging rules moving forward, any qualification that has a capstone, we are required to write into the packaging rules that there is a capstone assessment being undertaken in the qualification. We have to identify the unit that it links to. And then if we scroll down a little bit further, we have to identify that the units that the person must undertake prior to commencing or being assessed in the capstone unit of competency. So what you'll see on the top of this page here, there are 6 units of competency that the individual must undertake and complete prior to commencing and completing the capstone unit. We in the core units, what you'll see here, you'll start to see 3007. It's the step up. It's a Cert 3, so a high level of safety requirements. But then equally throughout the person's apprenticeship, the individual will, as their apprenticeship and their supervision requirements drop over their apprenticeship through their years, CD 3016 comes in at later stages to support that next step up into safety awareness and how to conduct themselves in the workplace under less supervision. So we've built right at the beginning when we started these town halls, we said that we wanted to scaffold safety across the qualification and ensure that the person is building their safety knowledge and skills appropriately throughout, whether it's in a Cert 1 or an advanced diploma. And at that Cert 3 level, typically the individual is under an apprenticeship model, and typically it's a 4-year apprenticeship model, some less depending on your jurisdiction. And so what you'll see is 3007 is in the first year where this is your roles and responsibilities when you're under complete supervision, CD 3016. Later in the apprenticeship, when you're not under complete supervision. Some of the other things in here you'll see, we've essentially redid all of the FD the fire detection units, and they've all been recoded to FD to relate to the particular industry sector. To help with managing to allow qualifications to be a little bit more flexible and respond to changes where imported units are being brought into qualifications that we own, but the units belong somewhere else. Under the TPOF, at the moment, any core units that sit that are imported from another training package, if it is a core unit and it changes on us, we are required to go through a major change process, which means that the qualification code changes. We have to set up a technical committee, and it's anywhere then from 6 to 12 months of reviews. To get around that, where we know that units need to be imported, under the TPOF, if they're sitting in elective banks, we have the ability to update them without going through a major change process. So what that means is that your qual code stays the same, and we can change units of competency, those imported units of competency, pretty much immediately, so that it's staying pace with those changes that have been determined by the experts over in another industry sector. So Group A for this group are all of those units that they need, but need for either registration or licensing, but are imported. So that's that. In terms of the changes occurring over in FSO, what you'll see is possibly those ICT units may change the number of them depending on what the outcome is. And today we've got the first one that's come through, so we are just monitoring that at the moment. But as it stands, that's what the ICT units are, to ensure that the person gets their cabler registration. And then down in the electives, you'll start to see some other bits and pieces in there. And for those in jurisdictions where they may have to hold a restricted electrical license, those RL units have been put in there to support the individuals in those jurisdictions. So that's this qualification will be created to, yes, they will, Kate. We're working really closely with them. The next, to support the fire detection and control industry in particular, we had a skill set on scope currently that is not being used. It has no enrolments, and when we posed to the SME group that it would be removed because of those no enrolments, they said there needs to be a skill set for all the other trade areas who want to move into fire detection and control that needs an upskill or a reskill in their knowledge and skills from their base trade. So we reconfigured this skill set to support all of the other electrotechnology trades out there coming across or wanting to come into the fire detection and control industry, so that they get the right skills to be able to interact, especially with the fire panels, being able to program them, being able to fault find and the like. So this is what this skill set is about. It's about supporting every other electrotechnology worker and giving them the ability and the right training to come across into the to the industry and to be able to work at that level without having to go back and do another apprenticeship. So these are all the FD units. I won't bring it up for you because we've just gone through it. These are all the FD units that sit in the core of their Cert 3 and fire detection and controls, plus the ozone depletion unit of competency, because that links to a license outcome as well if they're going to be releasing gases into the atmosphere. The entry requirement is an open cabler registration because they need to have the open cabler registration to work in the industry. So coming across, if you've got that already, you then just need to do these units of competency. And then the licensing and the outcomes related to the skill set and the qualification vary across the jurisdictions. And I know that the peak bodies are working with a number of jurisdictions at the moment in looking at occupational license outcomes. There's one in Queensland under the QBCC. They're looking at other jurisdictions to bring in an occupational license outcome as well. So if that occurs in those jurisdictions, this skill set will support the current workforce in particular to gain that outcome that they need, plus anyone wanting to come across. So any questions on fire detection and controls? Yes, Kate.
I've got one, thank you. So there's an issue across Australia with different jurisdictions having different rules for test and inspect of emergency and exit lighting, which I don't know. Well, there's inspect and test systems in this qual. Hopefully this is more fulsome. We wouldn't want to see something like this be required for an electrician to test and inspect emergency lighting. And we just, I think, need to be careful that regulators don't sort of see that as the requirement. So in Queensland, for example, electricians can do the inspect and test without anything else. They don't need a post-qual, whereas in New South Wales, there's real confusion, and the FPAA accreditation is in practice being required, which is quite a lot of quals. So there's real... there's just real confusion around that. Yeah, no, it's the lighting side of it hasn't come into consideration under this because it's considered an electrical job. So that's not part of this qualification, nor will it be a requirement. They can't do that. The fire text. Sorry, it's the inspect and test of the lighting. So currently, lots of people can do it with a fire protection Cert 2, I think, depending on the jurisdiction as to what's required. So you don't need to be an electrician to do test and inspect of lighting, but an electrician, we would say should, and some jurisdictions can do it with nothing more. We would say that's correct. Just wondering if that's come up in this process.
Those units to inspect and test, Kate, as are being looked at as part of the review for emergency lighting. So, but they don't sit in this skill set.
Yeah, I guess we'd just like to see, even if there was a standalone that could be delivered online. I don't think too many people would have a problem if it was not too expensive and easily accessible as a standalone inspect and test for lighting, because currently the pathway is just really unclear, and some electricians are being told they need to do a Cert 3 in fire, which is crazy.
Yeah. All right, we'll take that on board, and we can look into that further and get back to you, Kate, in terms of what we can do in that space.
Thank you.
Cert 3 and systems integration. This is a really good news story in terms of this qualification has no RTOs on scope and no delivery, and it was on the chopping block under the low and no enrolment review until CEDIA and AVIXA came to us and asked us to update it. And we worked with CEDIA in particular at the beginning of this process and put out a survey to the industry to ask them whether they, if we built something, would they actually use it? And the answer, overwhelmingly, the answer was yes. Again, this SME group is all industry people, which is really cool, and a few RTOs supporting and educating the industry around how training products are put together. So what we've got now is it will be a non-equivalent qualification because it's a complete rewrite. It's supporting the systems integrators, covering smart, assistive and adaptive technologies, particularly around healthcare, entertainment, residential and commercial settings. The industry bodies, being CEDIA and AVIXA, are working to advocate with the, or will be advocating to the industry training advisory bodies and state training authorities around funding and putting this onto a skills priority list to support attraction of apprenticeship type funding arrangements. They're doing a great job over there in that regard. So if I bring up the qualification, at what we've currently got is the Cert 3, and I'm going to run you through the Cert 3 and then all the skill sets. So to support, again, additional electrotechnology workers entering into the industry or who are currently working in the industry or would like to get into the industry, there needs to be some skill sets there. We know that, you know, at the moment there's a lot of people, if we take, give you a story of an individual who sent us an email, has severe disabilities, needed to retrofit their home in order to be able to continue living independently. That individual needed 4 different tradespeople to come out to get the systems working and talking to each other. And while this qualification does not lead to any type of licensing, and it does not lead to a restricted electrical license, definitely doesn't lead to any other type of license outcome, it's really important that we try and provide those that have our electricians in particular the ability to get some skills in terms of that home automation space to support our more vulnerable community members in being able to live independently moving forward without the additional costs of a lot of tradespeople coming out to support them. So this qualification, if we go down to the packaging rules, 16 core, 9 electives. Again, you'll start to see the 5 electives coming from Group A lead to your ACMA licensing outcome or registration outcome, I should say. It's not a license. And then additional electives from the list or from anywhere else. Again, we've noted that an individual may come into this without going through the Cert 2 pathway, so understanding the industry and where they can go is really important. So that's why CD 2027 is included. Again, we note that an individual may come into this qualification not through the Cert 2 pathway, and through our LLN review, we all know that there is a big gap between school literacy and numeracy and an apprentice or a Cert 3 literacy and numeracy levels for the electrotechnology space. And so that 2038 is about bridging the gap between school and Cert 3 units of competency that require a high degree of numeracy knowledge. This is about providing or, bridging that gap and supporting the student and being comfortable from school to those high level math units. You'll see in here we've got if we start to scroll down again, we've called these IS units, so integrator systems or integrated systems. We did it that way because if you put an S and an I, if you went UEE SI, I can look like a 1, and it just is a bit confusing when you start to read it, especially for those that are going to put this into their student management systems. 1 and I look the same. We didn't want you to get confused with that. And what you'll start to see is there's knowledge around understanding assistive technologies, being able to identify smart system communication protocols. It was really clear that, system integrators in particular interact with customer data and their sources. And so they need to understand how to act ethically with customer data. We just have to look at every day on the news what happens if people are not acting in the best interest of their customer, especially with how much our personal data is online these days. Then it goes into installing and commissioning those systems, configuring your smart home and building automation systems and setting up and testing your integrated systems. Again, this qualification has a capstone. They wanted one and called Verify Functionality and Compliance of the Systems. So that is we'll have to update the packaging rules. We've got that group this week to finalise all of that. So you'll see a slight change coming out. Group A is your ACMA open cabler registration units as they currently stand and are subject to change once FSO have updated those. And then if we go down into general electives, what you'll see here is a lot of CPP units being imported, and the reason behind that is due to the work that these individuals do, the environments that they go into. There is a requirement in a number of jurisdictions for the individual to pass a police check, and those CPP units link into those requirements. So that's why they're there. And then there is a lot of crossover in terms of ICT. When you think about systems integration and automation, a lot of it is in the cloud. So understanding networking protocols and all of that is really important, hence why ICT is being brought across. Then we get into our UEE units, and it's about your cables, building commission, audio distribution systems, repair, and the like. There are rack installation units, and then more assisted living technologies or integrating those technologies into a established environment. So that's what this qual is about. And then if I take you from that qual, there's an additional qual which we'll run you through in the next town hall for the Cert 4. So there's a pathway from the Cert 3 to the Cert 4. The current industry members don't hold these qualifications, and most of them are sitting at a Cert 4. So it's going to be able to be used by industry members to gain national qualifications, which is really cool. Again, the peak bodies being CEDIA and AVIXA are advocating for an OSCAR code so that they're fully recognised as well, which is, I just think it's amazing once you get the right people in the room, what you can achieve in that space. So in terms of that, we know that there's a lot of the workforce out there currently doing the work without the qualifications. So to support that workforce, we've also created 6 new skill sets, and I'm just going to run you through really quickly those skill sets. Like we said, you'll get a copy of this, and you'll get the, you know, at the end of this month, early next month, you'll actually see the skill sets on its own. The first skill set is an audiovisual installation skill set. It was created to address the identified industry requirement for dedicated practical AV installation pathways to complement your Cert 3 integration. It's brand new. There are 4 units of competency, and it is about installing, building audio distribution and residential or commercial AV setups and testing, which you know, which is great for those big jobs in the commercial sector. So those 4 units are installing and commissioning rack insulation, commissioning and building audio distribution systems, setting it up and testing it to make sure it all works, and then also installing commercial audio and video system components. There are no entry requirements, and as always, you've got to check your jurisdiction on your licensing and permit requirements. It can contribute towards the Cert 3 and systems integration, and it provides a pathway into the Cert 4. Next. This one here is fantastic for all the electrotechnology workers out there that are looking at moving across or would like to add additional services to their current work scope as a business. It is to support, and it's been identified that current electrotechnology workers may need additional competencies that are not typically held by those workers outside of the systems integrator industry to move into that systems integrator industry. More and more, we're moving to a world where everything is connected. You can use your phone to open your gate these days, and all of that. There needs to be some skilling around understanding how that all works together. So what you'll see here is that there is a lot of awareness of what installation, commissioning and configuration is, and it relates directly to systems integration. It's understanding what the assistive technology is about. It's understanding or identifying what smart system communication protocols are. It's understanding how to act ethically with customer data, and then installing and integrating those systems, configuring it and testing it for the end user. There are 8 units of competency, again, no entry requirements, and it will provide pathways into the Cert 3 if you wanted to, or it could go into any other UEE qualification where you can import these units. I'm really excited about that. Systems integration industry awareness skill set. It is about providing sales professionals, estimators and project coordinators and other non-trade personnel the foundational knowledge to have informed conversations with the client and technical staff about integrated system solutions. So this is the people in the office that, you know, might be on the end of the phone or going out and having to talk to our customers before you send out a technician. So it is understanding the system principles, communication protocols, and how to ethically handle customer data. So there are 4 units of competency in this one. As you can see, there are no technical skills in this. It's about the awareness of how to interact, identify and assist people with understanding where to go, what to do, and then handing over to the technician to do the actual work. it could, these units sit in the Cert 3, so it could be the start of somebody's pathway into systems integrators as a technician. So it could contribute to the Cert 3 if they wanted to. We go to the next one, my love. Then we go to a skill set at a level 4. So it's a step up, and now you'll start to see it's around the integration of it all. It's not just identifying and supporting, it's actually bringing it all together and making it all work. And it's like the design side of things. So this one is about assisted living and smart energy integration skill set. It's again, it's a brand new skill set. It addresses industry demands for workers who integrate assisted living technologies. So we start to think about the NDIS and the light context and smart energy monitoring systems such as your solar battery and EV charging for demand management platforms. It is targeted towards workers who integrate assistive living technologies and smart energy monitoring in residential and aged care settings. And it covers independent living technologies that link into certain NDIS type requirements. What you'll see there are 5 units of competency. Again, there is 2 or 3 sitting at that level 3, being understanding what assistive technology is, being able to integrate assistive technologies into the living space, and then integrating smart energy and monitoring systems as well. And then we start to look at more specifically that medical aid and monitoring devices and integrating further assistive technologies, not just the assisted living. It could contribute to your Cert 4. The next one is your commercial audio designer skill set. This is bigger stuff than the residential, and it's really, if you have a look at the skill set requirements, it's about advanced design, safety management and coordination competencies for the commercial AV work. And what you'll see here is that it takes it a step up into design work for AV systems in commercial settings, network infrastructure. It's designing and building your AV rack systems, commissioning it all, and then carrying out your safety. There's when you think about the next level, you've gone from a technician to maybe a lead technician or a project supervisor. There's an extra level of safety that is required once you step into more of a leadership role, and that's what the cert, that CD 4024 is about, is being able to step up into that and understanding what your responsibilities are once you start leading people or taking a lead role as a technician. And then the other one is the feedback is really clear that if you're going to supervise and coordinate people in the energy sector, particularly, you need to have some skills around people management, and that's what CD 4047 is all about, is stepping you up and understanding that you have these are your responsibilities as an individual when you take on a lead role, so that, again, it goes hand in hand with that health and safety unit. No unit and no prerequisite, no entry requirements, and it leads into your Cert 4. This one is about residential audio technician skill set. So coming back into the residential space, it's again around designing your AV systems for residential environments, designing the network infrastructure, and commissioning and integrating those AV systems together, all contributing to your Cert 4. And that's any questions about systems integrators and their skill sets. There's a lot there. Oh, and before you go, to get a better understanding of how we all got there, shameless plug of mine, it's just come out, Master Integrators. Paul Skelton and Paul Vivian and I did a podcast talking about how we got there with this this SME group and why this has occurred. So I've just dropped the link into the chat if you want to go and have a better understanding of it all.
Thanks, Christina. I'm going to talk to the renewable space, starting off with a Cert 4. Phil Dodd was actually running this project, but he's not available today, but I can talk to it from what I know from my perspective. And we've also got Travis Hayes, who's been working intimately with this group online, but is a bit under the weather. So I'll present, and Trav might be able to help me out if there's any curly questions that I'm not sure on. But really good SME group in this for renewable energy, and particularly around this Cert 4 when it first started off, widespread across industry and stakeholders from the new renewable sector. And when they first started off this group, there was a question around the Cert 4 and renewables as to a lot of the SMEs were like, what's the point of it, basically? And there was very low in uptake of it. People were cherry picking units out of it. Even in the skill set space, that we'll look at a couple of skill sets in a minute. There was like 5 skill sets, for instance, to do around the Grid Connect space. So I've really tried to consolidate and work with the industry experts on what they actually need, and including Solar Accreditation Australia have been involved in the conversations. So some really good results around this qual and the skill sets that have come out. But before we go to the qual doc, just a brief overview. So there's being a Cert 4, it's got the entry requirement of the Cert 3 electrical or an unrestricted electrical license. So then the core is quite reduced down to a core of 8 units, which we'll have a look at in a minute, the structure of those. And then a general elective group of 15 units, which is down from the electives that were listed before, and there was numerous groups, and there was 54 in total. This qualification. Some haven't been removed totally. What happened was there was some tranches of elective groups, like 3 or 4 units that were looked at, and they could be condensed down into a couple of units or 1 unit in some instances, given that there was a lot of repeat across the units. And the way industry has evolved was probably the key to that. That units that may have been relevant to be a specific unit back in the 20 or 22 package was seen now to be the industry had evolved into a space where so there was lots of input from the SME group around that if there was merging or solidifying units, etc. in this space. But the main focus of the elective group now is around Grid Connect, standalone systems, and also the EV and biodirectional. So the recent V2X project, that the skill set, those units have been included in the electives here, and then also in the inspection space. So if Rach or Christina is running this one, if we could pop to the qual, and we could probably just go down to the packaging rules and then core units. So again, you'll be able to have a better look at this once they're released on our website. But learner must complete a total of 12 units comprising 8 core and 4 electives, which at least 3 of the electives from the general group, and then there is the option of being able to import a unit, or you could use all 4 from the general elective group. So if we have a look at the core, please. So we can see there, because they're coming in, it's post-trade for an electrician. The core is more around that really Cert 4 level about, supervising, reporting. There's a Cert 4 specific health and safety unit. There's also the identify and isolate multiple supply systems. That unit will be in the Cert 3 electrical, but it was put into the core of this in case there's people coming in under the license entry pathway that don't have that unit, as the old 47 in the original package has been reworked significantly. So it was felt that if you hadn't completed the most recent qualification, you would need to do that unit. And then there's maintain currency, the communications and monitoring, load control, and develop and conduct surveys and provide advice on energy efficiency. And then if we go down and have a look at the electives, please, Rach. Stop at those ones. So a range of electives here. And importantly, we'll look at the skill sets in a minute, but this is where around the grid connect, particularly there's been some consolidation of units, so batteries included into rather than as standalone units, and that was worked with the SME group and as I said before, also Solar Accreditation Australia are aware of that evolving of the training package. So if we go down past the grid connect type units, so we've got and then the standalone power systems. Again, we'll have a look in a minute at the skill set involving those. And then if we go down to 10, 11 and 12, there is the units from the just recently released V2X skill set. So they've been embedded as electives in the qualification. And then that bottom one, install and maintain electrical vehicle equipment in a low voltage. So including really consolidated the elective groups down to what industry thought was required and what people are going to want to uptake and to try and get some uptake into this Cert 4, which really at the moment is not being used as a full qualification in its current state. As I said, people are either just doing the existing skill sets, or if a skill set isn't available for what they need, they're cherry picking units from this qual but not completing the whole qualification. So before we go to the skill sets, did anyone have any questions around that Cert 4?
There's a question from Melissa in the chat, Brett.
Assuming that planned standalone power systems in low voltage environment is about home batteries, I might refer that one to Travis, not knowing that unit intimately. Trav, you online there?
Yeah, it's actually part of the Grid Connect in there with the PV and includes batteries. So the key piece with the Cert 4 is that if an electrician chose to do this qualification, they can either choose those units, which would then allow them to get the accreditation, and that can be standalone also. So with the standalone, it does have the prerequisites as needing to attain the Grid Connect units, so it is covered in both of those.
Thanks, Travis. If we just move on to the skill set, thanks, Rach. So yeah, and so this skill set, and when we look at the next one, as Travis just said, the standalone, the units you'll see in this skill set are actually a requirement of the standalone skill set. So you're doing your Grid Connect and your with some batteries included, and then going to that more advanced standalone skill set post this one. So this skill set, again, as mentioned, there were some various options around this skill set. How you went about getting these units or this accreditation in the past. It's really consolidated down into this designer and installer, rather than being in separate skill sets, into the one. So you're planning, you're preparing, you're planning, you're installing, and you're commissioning and maintaining PV and battery systems across the 4 units in this skill set. So I've really tried to work with industry about what the expected outcomes would be, and around the accreditation piece as well, to uncomplicate the pathways for people without the content going missing, just bringing it in line with what's required at the end to get that accreditation. Any questions on that skill set? We'll have a look at the standalone. Yeah, go to the standalone, Rach, and we can take any questions on board as we work through. So as Travis mentioned, there would be the entry requirement, or the prereqs for these units are the previous ones we've looked at. So you need to do that Grid Connect stuff first before you moved into the more advanced standalone power systems. So this one, again, the stage work structure of prepare, plan, install, commission and maintain standalone power systems for a low voltage environment. Any questions around that one? And the
I
next
actually got
one,
one. Sorry, can I jump
Yep.
in? Sorry.
Yep.
Is there a reason? Should this cover also if you've trained battery and solar post trade? Should that not be sufficient to do bidirectional EV charges as well?
Trav, did you?
Well, with the bidirectional charges, there's been quite significant change in a lot of the technology. So that's where we've got the skill set that actually has the requirements for those, with a new unit also about maintaining those systems. So coming in as like having that experience, there is SAA. We're looking at the what accreditation would be available for these as well.
Yeah, I think we'd love to perhaps talk a bit further on that, because I think there's a view that if you have the skills to do batteries, you should be able to do the bidirectional as well.
Yeah, no worries. It's a really good question. So I could take that note back, but if you want to provide any further comments, we'll be able to get to that information.
Thank you.
And I might, while you got the mic, Trav, I might throw to you on this one. Sorry, Kate.
That's right. With the low voltage renewable energy inspection skill set, this has been created as a foundation unit that are linking to previous inspection units. And what this is aimed at is really focusing on renewable energy systems and being able to inspect those. It's aimed at licensed electricians, inspectors, and also compliance personnel. The components with this are about conducting compliance inspections of electrical installations, emergency supplies, and also the inspection of renewable energy systems. There wasn't actually a previous skill set that had been created, and that's where there was a need for this. It was identified through our consultation. It has 3 units that are involved, as mentioned before, with the new components, and the scope covers general low voltage installations. So any of that general electrical work that is going to be part of that balance of system for a renewable energy system, the emergency supply with relation to the batteries, and then any other components with the renewables. The content changes with this. The big one is about the verification against compliance requirements and the defect classification and inspection reporting. So that's a strong component there to really make it a standardized practice about how that reporting mechanism has been created and how it's implemented during any of these inspections. And also, one note with this is because there's different jurisdictional requirements for inspectors, that this skill set does not authorise electrical work design, construction or certification unless the individual holds that relevant licence. Thanks.
Thanks, Trev. If there are no questions around the renewables, we'll move on to the Cert 4, the electrical equipment and hazardous areas, and also a skill set that we've developed in this space as well. So what we quickly discovered at the start of this project when we started looking at the hazardous areas was there's 6 units out there around electrical equipment in hazardous areas that are widely used across the sector and required to enter these sites, etc. But those units didn't actually sit in any sort of skill set or anything. They sat in this qualification, but even in here, there was 2 of those in the core and the other 4 were actually in the electives. So a bit along the lines of renewables, our SME group in this were a bit like, well, who would do the Cert 4? We do these 6 units. And there was even references from people in the industry, the SMEs, that we do the EHA qualification, and we went, well, there is no qualification at this stage. This is a new title for this one. And they weren't referring to the Cert 4, they were referring to how RTOs had packaged up those 6 units that industry required. So one of our first things was to develop the skill set, but then when we started diving into this qualification, we were like, well, shouldn't those be the core around this Cert 4? And it was widely agreed that they should be. So that's probably the major change to this qualification, is those 6 units that you'll see in a minute in the skill set are embedded into the core of the Cert 4, along with a WHS unit and a reporting unit. We'll have a look at the qual in a second, but there's rather than having groups A, B, and C in the electives, they've been replaced with more functional groups that describe what the electives in those groups actually mean. And so we could probably bring up the qual for H. So if we look down just to the core units, so the 8 core plus 4 electives is the packaging rules. So you can see the core there. So the ones from the HA units, there's a 6 plus an additional visual inspection unit that was added, and then the CD WHS unit that we just looked at in renewables as well, Cert 4 WHS type unit. Entry requirements into this again is the Cert 3 electrical or the unrestricted license. And then if we go down to the elective groups, so still Group A, but we've given it a title. Just up a bit, please, Rach. So engineering and compliance. So you can scan down to the full group now. It's fine. So those bunch of electives in that group are all around engineering and compliance. Group B is overhaul and repair, and those names are actually reflect the standards for hazardous areas, the Australian standards. Christina?
Just explain why those ones in Group A are at a level 6, linking to your standards.
Yeah, so Trav, you probably best versed on that one as well.
Yeah, no worries. With the Australian standards for AS 4761 with electrical equipment and hazardous area, in Appendix D of that, there is a requirement for specific roles with the compliance and auditing, and also in underground coal mining and surface coal mining. Those units there are sitting at a higher level and previously were part of an advanced diploma in underground coal mining. Those qualifications only had very few enrollments, and most of the time they were just handpicking those units to be able to get their certain accreditation, mostly in Queensland. So what we have done is we have aligned those units to keep them at that AQF 6 level. And so they are available here to be used as electives. And they're also, we've got draft and currently in comment and review of the SME groups to be able to build skill sets with those units also.
Thank you, Trav. And just a question from Patrick around the electrical fitters. Yeah, we're working through the complexity around that, Patrick, given that there's a couple of those core 6 that actually include installation work. So the fitters couldn't do that, but we are looking at what we can do around the skill set or potentially in the fitter qualification to embed those units in. So there is a Cert 4 fitter type qual. So yeah, that's our plan there. But so yeah, the overhaul and repair, and then if we go down, I think there's, and then that's all just so there's two groups. So we might just jump to the, if there's any questions, but fairly closely related to this qual is the skill set that we've put together in the absence of any sort of formalised, besides putting, units that were obviously endorsed together, but a formalised national skill set. So that's what we've done here, and you can see that we won't bother looking at the document because most of the info is on this page. In that second box there, we've got the 6 units that are widely used throughout industry at the moment for being able to do electrical work in hazardous areas. So we've put them into a skill set. No electives, as you can't have electives in skill sets, and it could provide a pathway back into the Cert 4 to get the full qualification. And it also allows for, which anyone who's worked in this space would realise, the need to do refresher training on these units. So you could pick them up through this skill set, whether you've done the skill set initially or you've done the Cert 4, and then you'd only need to do the skill set to pick up your regular, whether it's 1 or 2 year refresher, depending on which industry you work in, which jurisdiction you work in, etc. Yeah, and as mentioned, Patrick, we're aware of the fitters needing some of these units. It's just how we package that up. It won't be the full qualification, most likely a skill set or embedded into qualifications where they could get them through that. And Cert 2 in electronics. Again, Phil's not here. He's the main player in this one, but I'm pretty across what's happened in this group. So basically there were 5 qualifications in total at Cert 2 level that sat in the electronics communications type space. So they've been consolidated into this qual with pathways based on the electives, specialisations based on the electives. So if you see there in the new box, the new elective groups, electronic assembly, electronic technology, data and voice, and computer assembly. So basically, we've rolled those qualifications into one, looked at 2 like we did with the Cert 2 in electrotechnology, the level of some of the units that were sitting in some of those Cert 2s that were direct imports from the Cert 3 electronics qualifications. So that's been addressed across this project. So from those 5 qualifications, we've ended up with the Cert 2 in electronics with 7 core units and 5 electives and specialisations. If we just wanted to bring up the document, that might become a bit clearer. So the packaging rules, so candidates must complete 1 of the following specialisations. That's the Cert 3. Might have had a glitch there. Apologies. I can, if you just want to open up for discussion, Christina.
Yep, that's okay. Is there any questions so far? Ben, you had a question. Will industry map these skill sets as required to have within training matrices, or are these going to be nice to have? Can you just expand on that for me, mate?
Yeah, sorry, Christine. I'm just wondering, I suppose you did go into some of the rationale about why the skill sets were created.
Yep.
But I suppose where would they be if industry don't enforce them or they're prerequisites or something like that? where would they appear? If that was, does that make sense?
So if they're not endorsed or it doesn't lead to an accreditation outcome, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, and that was where, like I suppose as an RTO, how do you be incentivized to put them on scope?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And, there's two parts to that we're working on, and through Melissa Arnold, who is our Director of Implementation, Promotion and Monitoring, we're working with the likes of, you've seen her name pop up in the chat a few times, Melissa Wortman, and the ITABs across the country to support those skill sets, because people are wanting more skill sets and they don't necessarily end up on funding lists, so that incentive to go and get them and having to pay for them yourselves is not really there. While that's not part of Jobs and Skills Council's remit to talk and advocate for that, the funding mechanisms, we know that we need to support the ITABs to advocate for skill sets to be added. So we're collecting some through the IPM. We will collect, letters of endorsement and what have you around the needs for those skill sets to help influence the decision around what skill sets could be funded, or that kind of stuff.
Excellent. Thank you for your response. I think you just gave me the connector, which I was missing in my mind. No, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you. Excellent.
You're welcome. And Melissa?
Yeah, I'm just following on, Christina, from what you said. In New South Wales, they will generally fund anything that fits within a qualification. Standalone skill sets might be a different kettle of fish if it's not part of a qualification. In the past, they've funded skill sets, and they didn't have to be, actual formalised skill sets in a training package. It was whatever combination a particular business wanted, as long as you could justify it. So we didn't really need formalised skill sets. But as far as, talking to the other guy that just mentioned about the incentive to do it, yeah, I agree. Look, unless it's a licensed or there's some sort of compulsion to do it, you're not going to have a lot of people wanting to do it if they don't have to. So, funding is great, but if you don't have to do it as part of a license or a part of a qualification or whatever, there's going to be no compulsion to do it, and therefore the RTOs are going to be saying, well, why should I put it on my list? And I get all that, but in New South Wales at the moment, we're not quite sure whether they're going to keep funding skill sets. So, certainly we don't know if they're going to fund them at all, or whether they're just going to fund formalised ones. At the moment, the budget is still unclear.
Thanks, Melissa. Amen, before we move on.
Yeah, just in addition to what Melissa and Ben were saying, I'm an electrician, and I've done much accreditation through private entities. So if I wanted to go through and become accredited in the major players that do integration for home systems, I've always had to go out to Clipsal or Lutron or Philips Dynalite to go do their private certification. So like Melissa was saying, if there's no incentive to do it, I can't see the reason for why people would want to take it on, but that's just my comments with it. That's all.
With those systems integrated quals, they very much working with CEDIA and AVIXA, they align with their accreditation. Where we can, and as we're going through this process, we're working with those bodies to ensure that, especially skill sets, there is an outcome, there's something that you get from it, and it's not just a few units of competency. So it's a good call out.
Now we got the right version up, I might just run through this one, Christina. Thanks. So you can see the different specialisations there and the requirements within them. So cert to an electronic assembly as the first specialisation, then electronic technology, And you'll see the elective groups as we go down further. Data and voice and computer assembly. So there's our core units that everyone would do. And then we move in, we've got general electives. And if you would have noticed through those packaging rules, most of the specializations, you're able to select a couple of general electives, or you're also able to import units from other training packages or other qualifications. And then if we go down to each specialist group, we've got Group B, electronic assembly. So 5 units there. So around electronic components, soldering, etc. We go to Group C, electronic technology, just the 3 units there. Audio-visual equipment, repairing components, repairing and placing components, and solving problems. Data and voice, we've got the ICT units, replacing the UEE ones. And then computer assembly, again, a mixture of ICT and some UEE units with around that repairing equipment. But that install and configure home office networks from the ICT and install and configure small and medium business networks from the ICT. So any questions around that Cert 2 and the consolidation across? And most of those Cert 2s that we've wrapped into that one would be, had very, very low enrolments, and some, there was one in the Cert 2 in antenna equipment that hasn't had enrolments for years. So.
Okie dokie. So a few things before we wrap up today that we want to provide you with in terms of how are you going to be able to unpack all of this. There's a lot of changes coming down the pathway, as you've seen. And through the IPM that we have stood up for UEE, the IPM team will be working really busily to provide you with the support, supporting documentation to help you with your transition. One of those supporting documentations, which we've already developed as part of this review, and it's what we're using to support the development of your training products, is a verb glossary. While it is an IPM artifact, like I said, we have used this to help develop the units of competency in terms of the way in which we're writing your performance criteria and your performance evidence in particular. So when you see a word like apply in this verb glossary, we will be able to, it will tell you what we mean by apply. So it's going to be a reference tool that we will be putting up on our website, and it will be available to you upon release of the training products. We have got this tested and reviewed by LLN experts at TAFE Queensland, who work in the electrotechnology space as LLN support teachers, and through Charles Sturt University, who've provided us with feedback on the way in which we've interpreted and defined each of these words. Rach, in the notes, I've put a link to the dashboard, and I just wanted to show people what it will look like. And so what we've done here on the slide there, it said that it's been structured into, we've got 90 different verbs structured into 11 functional categories like cognitive and analytical actions, creative and design actions, handling and responding, installing and configuration, all of that kind of business. So on the dashboard, because it's very big, the document, and you'll get lost within the document, we've created this dashboard. And if you go to the top, my love, and on line 4 or row 4 there, where it says select a verb, you can open that one up and drop it down. Why is it not working for you? Maybe I can share. that's not working for Rach. So if I just share my screen here, if you're looking, when you're reading the training product, especially the units of competency, and you're like, what do they mean by participate? You can click on participate here. It will give you an overall definition, and then it tells you at each level, AQF level, what participate means in terms of defining it. We've given you, and I must say, if Steve Bryant is on the line, he's done a magnificent job in this and took a long time to get this right. He's provided us with examples for you, and then at the ACSF levels in terms of learning, reading, writing, communication, numeracy, digital technology, and again we've said that we are embedding safety across everything that we do. So while safety is not part of the ACSF, we have purposely put that into this because we believe that it is a core skill that a person must have working in electrotechnology. So yeah, this one here, participate, you can see is used across all AQF levels and this is what we mean when you see participate in your units of competency in particular. This will help you greatly, I think, in terms of interpreting the units and writing your learning and assessment content. And it will help you, and if anyone on here is from a compliance team, this will help you understand what we mean when you're interpreting and assessing or auditing the units. So yeah, it goes through, you know, what it means by work, again, an overall definition, and then across the board. Where there is, so if I use a unit or a word called install, we have identified at a level 1 it's too complex. So where it is not applicable, we have not, it will state that for you as well. So you know that install should not be showing up in any of those units that are linked to a Cert 1. That's that. The other one, Rach, you can take back. When can we get a copy of this, Christina? I don't know, Patrick. We'll see. I want to give it to you now, but I've got to get it through the team first before they, because they'll get cranky at me if I release something too early. Radio. And the other thing that we are doing, and I don't have a working example for you, the other glossary term list that we are putting together for you, again, it's an IPM artifact, but you know, our team is writing these products, and as we're writing the units and using particular words, technical words, we are building out a glossary around technical words. So if you've been around the vet sector for a long time, years and years ago, so I realise I've been around for 17 years this year. When I first started, there was this beautiful range statement section in your units of competency, and the particular words in your performance criteria would be bolded. And then you would go to the range statement, and it would actually define what that word means and give you examples of what it means. While we can't put that back into the training product itself, this technical term list and your verb list for applying what it means to apply something, the technical term list will do something very similar in terms of when we say workplace documentation, we will give you a list of what that means and what we believe it means, so that when you go to develop, you'll be able to take that and go, they mean job sheets, take 5, they take this, blah, 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 blah. This is what they mean when they say this word in this unit of competency. Again, it's a about helping you interpret this, but more importantly, your compliance teams interpret this when they go to do your validations of your units of competency for you. Miss the good old range words. I know, so do I, Patrick. Sarah? Oh, she's
Can't hear you, Saz, if you're talking. Blah, blah, blah will not be a technical term, by the way.
but blah, 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 yada, yada, yada is not a technical term. Anybody else got any questions while Sarah sorts out her audio issues? One of the reasons why it would definitely be part of an IPM artifact and not in the CVIG is because we can go in and modify those documents really quickly. We can add more words, more technical words as we go through. We get a lot of questions about what do you mean by this, or what does it mean by this? And so as we receive those types of common questions, if it is a technical term that we are having to define for people over and over, clearly it's not clear. And many people would be struggling with the interpretation. So through the IPM artifacts, we are able to update them more quickly than say through a the actual TPOF training product documentation that we maintain under the TPOF. Yeah, it's a living document, exactly. Okay, I think we are now open. We've got 8 minutes to go. Any questions? I love that you ask questions all the way through, because we get to this point, it's like, questions.
Christina, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can,
Yes.
Sarah.
I'll just jump off. I had to transfer to my phone for some reason. But what I was wondering, but you answered the question with regards to those terms being in the CVIG, where will that stand with ASQA? Because ASQA doesn't enforce things that are not in the units. And that's going to create issues where there's this growing dodgy RTO situation on the institutional delivery side as well as the fully on the job training side of things. So how's that going to help that situation? I see that as not necessarily a good thing. It's a good thing to be able to update them quickly, but not a good thing for compliance.
Yeah, look, it can't, it's a really good thing for implementation. So I must be really clear. It's about supporting RTOs in particular, or even the employers understanding how to apply those words in the context that that need to be applied. We can't fit them into any of those compliance documents. It doesn't. The TPOF doesn't allow for it. So it's not going to solve the problem of unscrupulous RTOs, unfortunately. But what we are hoping it does achieve is more consistency in the application of the documents. And where it comes to ASQA can use it. While they can't enforce it, they can refer to it as well. So it helps them actually interpret the wording better as well.
I was just wondering if PSO are actually raising this in the current TPOF review that's ongoing at the moment. I know it's not a major review of the TPOF and it's only very minor changes that are apparently occurring, but this is a very significant issue for industry because we're seeing an increase now in multiple states and territories of this absolutely unscrupulous RTO behaviour on both ends of the scale, with completely on the job delivery and assessment and completely institutional, and the dodgy, pay for a qual and do no apprenticeship stuff.
Yeah, the long and short of that is, yes, Sarah, we are working and raising that. We have a direct line to ASQA ourselves. So when we see these things, we raise it with them in terms of some of the assessment conditions and the wording. We are working with DUA and ASQA to make sure that the words are more enforceable.
And the assurance body's also been in discussions with ASQA around the significance of the CVIG and trying to get them to recognise it more. So even though they probably both share the same floor in the same building, they might not be on the same page there, but they're certainly working towards that. And ASQA is on board a bit with that as well. So
Thanks for the feedback. It doesn't really change anything though.
No.
It doesn't make it better or stronger for anybody.
No, and we can't, as a training product developers, it's some of those issues are an ASQA issue, unfortunately. If we go to the next slide, as always, we would like your feedback. If you could scan the QR code, or Rach, do we have a link that we can put into the chat for people that are sitting on their computers?
Yep, I just popped it in the chat.
Oh, yeah, it's there. Very good. So you've got the link in the chat, or you can scan the QR code. I'll give you a moment to complete that survey. Okie dokie. If we go to the next slide, Rach. Our next town hall meeting is on the 19th of October. You'll see that there is, next time we will go through a lot more qualifications for you, and there'll be feedback from the first round of releases, which we will share back with you as well. I guess the final statement here is we are testing the initial feedback, and I must stress it is initial feedback. It is not official public consultation, and we're trying a new system. So there will be tinkering and there will be some additional work behind the scenes. If it doesn't work quite well, just send us an email through the training inbox and we're more than happy to support you with all of that. But we really do appreciate your time today, and we really do hope that you'll come. We see you on the 19th of October to talk more about things. And yes, Rebecca, there is a lot to digest, and there's a lot of stuff that we are doing. It's a bit overwhelming sometimes. Okie dokie. Well, if we've got no other further questions, I'll give you 2 minutes of your day back. And we really appreciate your time today. And like we said, if you've got any questions, Rach has put the training inbox email address into the chat. So reach out and have a great afternoon, everybody.
Bye all. Thank you.
Bye now.
Thank you, Christina.
Thanks
You're
all.
welcome.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, team. Well done.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
You're welcome.